The 10th spot is John Dutilly. In the 11th spot, it's the number 30 of Jesse Dutilly. In the 12th spot, it's the number 6 of Ed Joseph. In the 13th spot, the number 68 of Danny Poling. In the 14th spot is the number 5 of Steve Black. And the Desoto pace cars lights are out, and they're coming down and take the green flag. And the number 4 of Brian Wagner takes the early lead going into turn number 1. The number 23 gets a little side. Oh, in the 20 car, William Slack hard into turn 1 wall. 4 other cars finish nailing the turn 2 wall. Caution flag is out. We'll get a complete restart on that one, but William Slack probably won't be restarting. Before that caution flag came out, you got the number 22 is Shane Whitbeck starting there in about mid-pack. Shane's going to the NASCAR school. He's sponsored by Craftsman Tools. As the 23 of Mike Gale leads him down into turn number 2. Turn number 4, green, green, green. Here we go. Side by side, the 23 and the 4, Brian Wagner. Got into turn number 1 now as Wagner takes the early lead. The number 1 of Joe Gagan comes up side by side with the 23 of Michael Gale. John Dutilly in the 38 car moving up into third spot now as Gagan drops down to the low side of the track for the second spot, but it's Brian Wagner pulling out to an early lead here coming out of turn number 2. Dutilly side by side now with Gagan coming down the backstretch. The 22 of Shane Whitbeck and the 30 of Jesse Dutilly are also into the fray for the second spot. John Wilson, last week's winner, is also moving up now, getting by the 23 of Michael Gale. John Dutilly now moves into the second spot, looking at the leader, Brian Wagner, as they come down the backstretch. Shane Whitbeck and Jesse Dutilly side by side now for that 4th spot as Joe Gagan gets a little loose coming out of turn number 4. Dutilly looks on the inside. Out of turn number 1 now is Jesse Dutilly as Gagan gets high coming out of turn number 2. John Dutilly now closing the gap on Brian Wagner as they come out of turn number 4. Jesse Dutilly in 3rd, Shane Whitbeck in 4th, and John Wilson now into the top 5 spot. The field is bunched up for the 6th spot as the 23 of Michael Gale leads the rest of the second pack out of turn number 2. Meanwhile, John Dutilly closes the gap coming out of turn number 4 as they head down the front stretch. Jesse Dutilly still your 3rd place car. Number 68 of Danny Poling now breaks out of the second pack, moving in on the 1 car of Joe Gagan coming down the back stretch. John Dutilly closes the gap even closer now, coming down the front stretch on Brian Wagner. Dutilly looking on the outside as they go into turn number 1. Wagner gets a little sideways coming out of turn number 2, and Dutilly takes advantage of it going down the back stretch. John Dutilly now your leader coming out of turn number 3, and it's Jesse Dutilly moving in on the back bumper of Brian Wagner. Shane Whitbeck is your 4th place car, and John Wilson closing the gap on Whitbeck. Dutilly now on the outside of Wagner coming out of turn number 2. They're down the backstretch. Now it's an all Dutilly 1st and 2nd place. As John Dutilly is your leader, Jesse Dutilly 2nd, Brian Wagner is 3rd, Shane Whitbeck 4th, and John Wilson is your 5th place car. Dutilly hooks the car up coming out of turn number 4. Jesse Dutilly trying to close the gap on his dad going into turn number 1. Brian Wagner holding on to that 3rd spot, but Shane Whitbeck is closing in fast. John Dutilly is your 5th place car. Joe Gagan is 6th. The 68 of Danny Poling is 7th. 14th John Bailey is Poling falls off the pace now, coming out into turn number number 4. He's down on the inside, out of harm's way. John Detilly still leading. Jesse Detilly coming down the front stretch out of turn number 2. It's still John Detilly, but Jesse's closing the gap. Shane Whitbeck now looking on the outside of Flying Brian Wagner coming down the back. Into turn number 3 is Whitbeck on the outside of Wagner. Lap traffic coming up. Could play under this thing. Down the front stretch now, it's still Shane Whitbeck on the outside. Whitbeck slides high and Wagner regains the 3rd spot. Meanwhile, Jesse Detilly closing in on John, coming down the front. Oh, and Wagner gets a little sideways and into the dirt. Whitbeck takes the 3rd spot. Wilson moves into 4th. Wagner gets back out on the track in 5th. Now just barely 2 car lengths separating John and Jesse Detilly. And John Detilly gets a little slide coming out of turn number 4 down the front stretch. That allows Jesse to close in even closer. John Detilly is your leader coming out of turn number 2. Jesse Detilly in 2nd. Shane Whitbeck in 3rd. John Wilson in the 05 in 4th. And Brian Wagner now is your 5th place car. Jesse all over the back bumper of his dad John now as they go into turn number 1 coming out of 2. Oh, and all over the back bumper of John is Jesse Detilly. Jesse looking on the outside, but John able to close the door. Now John slides and Jesse looks on the inside coming out turn number 4. John again slams the door and Jesse comes on the outside. Jesse looking for any advantage to get by his dad. Take this feature win. We got 16 laps into this feature. We got lap cars coming into the play now. Side by side coming out of turn number 2. Oh, and John slides up in front of him. John and Jesse Detilly now coming down the backstretch. It's Jesse on the inside. Going into a caution flag is out. We got Brian Wagner on fire in turn number 4. Fire in turn number 4. Everybody stay back away from the fence. And Brian Wagner's out of his car. Brian Wagner's out of his car. Give him a hand, everybody. Flying Brian Wagner. Now he's frying Brian Wagner. Good kid. Won his first feature race just a few weeks ago. Brian Wagner has had a rough time. Good. You got 2 there, right? That's for Bradenton. Lights are off on the Desoto Speedway pace cars. John Detilly leads them down into turn number 3. Now John is your leader. He will start the field. And a bunch pack coming out into turn number 4. And Shane Whitbeck blows by Jesse Detilly. John Detilly is your leader. John Bailey now caught on the outside as Shane Whitbeck is your 2nd place car. Number 30, Jesse Detilly now looking on the outside as Arlen Pope moves in into the 4th spot. John Wilson is your 5th place car. On the outside now it's Jesse Detilly coming in on turn number 2. Jesse Detilly now on the outside coming out of turn number 2 with Shane Whitbeck on the inside. White flags out for John Detilly as Jesse Detilly looking on the outside. Jesse slams the car into turn number 2 now. On high on the outside, close to the outside, retaining wall. Jesse Detilly in 2nd, but it's all John Bailey coming out of turn number 2. Turn number 4 now. John Bailey crosses the start-finish line. He's your winner. Jesse Detilly is 2nd. Shane Whitbeck 3rd. Arlen Pope is 4th, and John Wilson rounds out the top 5.